You are now tuned in to the Cosmic Combos Podcast, your number one source for accurate, relevant, and thought-provoking astrological conversations in the podcast nation. The place where stars and minds align.
Peace. You're now tuned into the Cosmic Combos Podcast. I'm your humble host, Harut, and we got the master astrologer, Brother Rob. How's it going, brother?
Peace, brother. All is well. All is well. How about yourself, King?
I can't complain, man. Feeling great, doing great. Show is doing great, good progress. You know, no complaints. No complaints, man. You know, we're at episode 7 now. Episode 6 is pretty good. You know, that was pretty much a listener requested show, and people seem to be pretty into it. You know, how you feel about how it turned out?
I thought it turned out very well, brother. I listened to it, and I was very pleased with the outcome in the show. A lot of people really wanted to know how to look at a chart with regards to an African country. And I thought that would be the country that would be most apropos to our situation that connects us to the continent at home. So I thought it was really, really a good show, and look forward to doing more African countries as we go.
Absolutely. Yeah. Liberia is an interesting one, kind of gotten an interesting rap, in the mainstream, like we mentioned on the show from Vice, they kind of put out a little mini doc on it that was interesting to say the least. But it's good to, be able to look at the charts and approach, an issue like that from an objective point of view,
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, is, giving an objective standpoint, having the ability to really look into something without our own personal coloration and our own personal insights and ideas. Of course, both of us being of African descent, we, of course, have our own personal slants, but the knowledge, the stars, the heavens always have their final say. And definitely that chart is one that shows the ins and outs of their history and their dilemmas.
Absolutely. And before we get too far into things, want to remind you that this show was brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group and Orishas Astrology. You can find Push It Forward Media Group at Push It Forward on Instagram and pushitforward.com. That's pushitfwd.com. That's where we have short films, interviews. You can find this show there. A bunch of media productions that we're working on there. And Brother Rod, tell them how you can get the Orishas Astrology.
Real simple. Just go to IG or Facebook, both of which have the same name. To find me, it's Shechem Ra on either IG or Facebook. Or if you're interested, if you have any spare time, downtime, you can go to Orishas Astrology on YouTube. You can find me there as well.
Indeed. And, on that note, we got a special announcement that, I'll announce at the end of the show. A pretty good giveaway, that we're gonna, give to the people. So, I share the details on that at the end of this show. All right. So, let's get into it. So, we're going to stick with the African vibe here, man, and really kind of get into a necessary subject, in regards to, our history and in regards to African spirituality, the African spiritual systems, and how they relate astrologically. personally, especially nowadays with, social media, the traditional African systems have kind of gained a bit of a resurgence. In a bit, it's become more popular. It's more in vogue now. You see a lot of people, referring to themselves as, witches and, all these different names and stuff like that. Which is, like I said, it's not, this is good. It's good to see people, getting back, to these ways. But there's some key, details that can kind of help that process along. That's really what we're going to get into in this show right here. Dealing with, the Orishas, the forces, the main forces that's, that's taught, and, kind of the core, West African traditional religions. So I think this would be a real good, treat, for you all to get into. And I think we'll all be able to learn a lot from this show and, refine, our practices and refine our understandings of this subject. Right? What you think about that?
I think it's well overdue that we discuss these because, like you said, there's a lot of conjecture, a lot of ideas, a lot of commentary on the Orishas and the powers that be. And we're definitely going to get into some clarification purposes as to who and what they are as far as the cosmos is concerned.
Indeed. So let's get into it. All right.
Let's do it. So, in proper order, we always start off with certain principles first, right? And that's just in proper order with regards to any African spiritual system. You always want to give homage and honor to that particular principle, that particular operative that we would say allows us to navigate the road, right? And that is Eshu, or Elegua, in the Yoruba pantheon, or the Santeria pantheon. And Eshu, rightfully so, being the one that we keep by our door, right? The one that protects us at the crossroads, is one that we really can talk about very easily. It's pretty much across the board that it is the principle of the messenger of the gods. And being the messenger is one that, the language of the power of communication is what exalts man in a great deal above creatures. Not to say other creatures can't communicate, because they do, but the ability to harness and control language, the ability to express ourselves above and beyond body language, beyond symbols and things of that nature, gives us an edge as far as the creatures on this planet. And the faculty or the principle, the Orisha that does that is Eshu. And Eshu is also known as the trickster. It's the one that, really calls us to task to make sure that, our means of expression and our means of dialogue is above reproach. And the reason why it is so fundamental to discuss first is because literally, if you can't talk and can't express yourself in an effective and common sensible way, a lot of things are closed off to you on this planet. The one thing I want to say before we go any deeper with any of these principles or Orishas is that there's a difference between the Orishas and the planets. And when I say difference, there's some commonalities, meaning that they are the same principles, but the Orishas are really terrestrial forces, right? They're forces that are really dealt with on the physical plane, on this plane that we call Earth. And the planets are more cosmic forces. Now, I know some people might say, well, the Orishas are cosmic as well, but you're going to see why, really, when you understand the Orishas, they're really more oriented towards life on Earth, right? Eshu, again, is the owner of the crossroads. And crossroads, again, whenever you have an intersection of one role going another way, accidents can happen, things can change, things can shift. And that's what it rules, is the ability to shift from one direction to another, the ability to change our mindsets from one way to another. And the planet that most represents this is the planet that does shift more than any other planet in the heavens, and that's Mercury. In fact, Mercury, which is a Greek name, really, the name that we would use in what we would call Jyotish is Bud, right? Akin to Buddha, but Bud. And literally, even Mercury is considered the messenger of the gods. So, you can see right there, right off, even the Greeks kind of got it right, and they say they got it all right, but they got some of it right. It's the winged messenger, it has wings on his feet, he's swift, he's fast. And that trickster aspect, is that aspect that Mercury retrogrades more than any other planet. It literally retrogrades 3, sometimes 4 times a year, depending on the year itself. And those retrogrades, as we all know, with dealing with Mercury, you already know, right?
Hey, no joke.
Yeah, they're gonna deal with all kinds of goodies, right? It's jam packed with goodies. When I say goodies, we're talking about lessons. We're talking about making sure that things are checked, right? Making sure your automobile is checked, right? Making sure your computer system is backed up, making sure that your words are right and tight. You're dealing with contracts, you triple check them. I say quadruple check them. All those
Make
things.
Make sure your SD cards is formatted.
Yeah, you know that, right?
I got a personal story on that recently.
Already,
whole project wiped away on the Mercury retrograde.
Wow, and. They get a bad rap, but what it is basically, it doesn't mean you can't do things during a Mercury retrograde. You just got to do it with caution, do it with a keen eye. But again, that's the trickster aspect, That's the aspect that really calls you to task. And it happens how many times? Generally 3. Well, guess what? Eshu's number is 3, right? Perfect time, perfect synchronicity, right? Perfect synchronicity,
Absolutely.
You can't get any better than that. For the most part, you can get a minimal of 3. You're going to get 3 per year. And, Eshu's number is 3. Even the calories on the shrine, when you have the Eshu head, it's 3 calories. So you can't get any better than as far as the correlations on that. But again, it is something that we look at crossroads are things that are terrestrial. In the African sense, when you have a major crossing of someplace, you're crossing one energy with another, right? You're saying that this is one flow from this direction and this is another from another. And when you get that, you get zones or areas of energy, right? Just like in Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, when you have 2 lines that cross, you get a point. Whether it be on the earth, which we call ley lines, right? Whether it be in the body, called meridians, or sometimes even people label them as chakras. When those major energies intersect, then you have a vortex of energy that opens and possibilities are abounding. So, Eshu is real easy, he's Elegba is real easy. You always can point him out, in any culture, in any way, anywhere you go, right? But the next one, it's not, these are not hard to figure out once you know certain astrological and astronomical principles. Mercury is the fastest moving planet next to the moon with regards to transits. So that's why it retrogrades so often. It takes 88 days to make a full circuit around the sun. Right, but then it tricks you because it only takes 59 days to turn on its side. But it takes 59 days to turn on its side. So, it's strange indeed, right? But the other thing, the next one we really want to delve into is one of my favorites. And I'm sure one of many favorites that very popular here in the West, because there's many Orishas. There's hundreds and hundreds of Orishas. We're just going to cover the basics, primary 7. We're not going to get into Oya and Oshain and Oba and the different ones, right? We're going to get into just the major common ones that everyone knows, the 7 African powers, if you will. But the next one is Shango, right? And Shango, is one that is a little different in that, Eshu is easy, he's a trickster, he rules the principle of being a messenger or carrying messages, which is the process of communication and so forth. But, Shango is a little different in that Shango is, in the terrestrial sense, he's thunder and lightning, right?
Yeah.
Right. And, thunder and lightning is something that happens on Earth. Now, it does happen other places in the solar system. It's not an exclusive phenomenon to the planet Earth. There are other planets that have thunder and lightning. However, considering thunder and lightning, it's not one that you would, say, well, how is that cosmic? It really isn't cosmic. It's really terrestrial. It's an earthly phenomenon. It happens on planets.
Yeah.
And, when you understand that, it's kind of hard to kind of, attach it to a specific planet, if you will. And I've heard different things. I'm not going to go into the variances of what I've heard, but just know that that lightning aspect, for example, right? And this is one thing that people get confused. They'll say, well, his day is Thursday, right? Like Thor, like they'll compare him to Thor, in the Norse tradition, right? The Norse gods, or, Thor in the comic books or what have you, because Thor does rule the same thing, thunder, right? And lightning. However, in the sense of understanding what this is really about, lightning is a very powerful force. I mean, people get struck by lightning and survive, and some people get fried to a singe. It just depends on how things are situated and if it's your day or not. But lightning is 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit, right? It's hotter than the surface of the sun. Right, so that amount of energy and heat localized into one specific point in space and time holds the understanding of what really Shango is really showing us, and that is immense power. Right?
Yeah,
immense power. I'm talking power that can literally split a tree, crack a car, open a house, shake the earth, if you will. And that power, in the sense that when we look in the heavens, and also the other thing is that the little things, the little titles of these particular Orisha given, it gives you a hint of what it is, and it's the king. Shango is the king, par excellence. He's the king. And the king of the solar system is the sun.
Yeah.
The sun itself is the king. It's the one where all planets circle and center around. In astrology, it represents governments, kings, presidents, CEOs, right? Rulers, leaders, and so forth. So when you understand those correspondences, it's very easy to see how they're related. The title, if you will, of a king is one that rules, when he's a positive king, he rules well. When he's a negative king, all feel his wrath. Well, the sun is the same way. On a good day, right? The sun provides all the light that we need to create photosynthesis, and photosynthesis is the basis for all nutrients that circle around the planet Earth. And it actually controls the weather as well, right? The sun controls pretty much everything that goes on this planet. In fact, there's no sun, there's no us. But the other side of it is that when that sun is too hot, right? When it's unbearable, right? Like that king, like, good old Trump, right?
Yeah.
Right. When the sun is overbearing, as they say, right? Intolerable, unkind, right? It can ruin crops. Right.
Absolutely.
It can cause sunburn. Typically not those of African persuasion, but it can happen. Sunburn is still able to hit those of us that are of a darker persuasion. It can create catastrophes. Like I said, droughts. When you have a drought, the water's dried up. You curse the sun almost. If you were like, man, I wish it would just lighten up a little bit, right? So it's that same aspect of the king that, when the king is righteous and, balanced and fair and judicious, it provides all life on earth. But when it's a tyrannical, when it's bossy, right? Then it can, definitely cause harm with regards to whatever it lays its eyes on. So, same principle, again, fairly easy to delineate when you understand the inner workings of what these things are. But again, the thunder and lightning is a terrestrial force, and the sun is a cosmic force. So relating the two is, once you understand, like I said, the meanings is fairly easy.
Yeah.
Moving in to Shango's mother, right? Yemaya, right? She rules the oceans and specifically the shores, the shores that provide us with the life that we need to survive, where all life comes from on this planet. For the most part, it comes from, from the sea to the land. And she rules that life-giving process. And, planetary-wise, the one planet that would be obvious, that would be the controller of the oceans, is the moon. And, again, we're talking oceans. So oceans are on this planet. Now, I'm not sure, and people probably find other, things out there that would say there might be oceans in other. I'm not sure. I haven't heard of it yet. It could be. But from what I know, the only place that we know that it's like a blue planet is our planet. And the planet is blue, right? Primarily because, the ocean is 70%, covers 70% of the planet. So she rules that. And the moon itself, creates, the tides. When it's a new moon, it's low tide. When it's evening, right? The tides change. When it's high noon, the tides change. This is all because of the tug and pull of the moon on this particular planet. And so,
absolutely,
when you understand that, then, just like Shango, referencing the sun, but also referencing the thunder and lightning, those oceans that are full of life, full of variances with regards to what life can produce. The moon rules the variances in our life, the variables within our spirit, the variables within who we are, that flows, that ebbs and flows, that has high tides and low tides. In fact, there's studies that they show that when you have surgery, it's best to have surgery on a new moon because the flow of blood, which the blood is also has saline in it. It's better to have those surgeries on a new moon than a full moon, right? Because a full moon will create an inordinate amount of blood to flow. And this is scientifically proven. They know this, right? These are just things that they know. And even the police departments will tell you that they get a higher number of calls when the moon is full, for instance, when the moon is new. And we just had a new moon. In fact, I know a lot of people have asked me about this whole black moon piece, right? And let's just be honest, y'all. It's a phenomenon that happens every so often. But, they'll name the moon every color. I've heard blue, red, green, pink, black, and there's a few of those that might have some credence, that do have some significance. But for the most part, all the colors are there just to kind of give you an indication of where it is as far as the cyclical process the moon has in regards to the Earth. And there's no real deep significance of a black moon, if you will. I mean, it's just the same as a new moon. It just happens twice in the same cycle, within the same 30-day period. It's nothing that you would want to, it's not like some portent is or some omen is coming, because, there's these two of these lunar cycles. It just happens to be that it happens every so often because of our calendar year. Now, moving on from Yemaya, from Mama Moon, right? Going in a little deeper, we get to the warrior Orisha, right? Ogun, right? And the Haitian revolt, which took 10 years to pull off, to overthrow the French here in Haiti. That was due to Ogun, right? The principle of war, right? Yeah. Some good movies out there. Columbo is an excellent movie to see.
I was just watching Columbo today.
Right. Excellent movie, man. One of my classic favorite movies to see. That you can really see the variances of the Orisha, right, in that particular movie. I mean, I'd say one of the best movies, really the best movie, to get a good understanding of them.
I need to remake it.
They need a new version. Hey, maybe.
That's what I'm saying. We're gonna make it, man. Push it forward.
Push it forward. Come on, y'all. I know the genius up in Push It Forward could definitely tighten it up for 2019, 2020, or going forward. Oh, yeah. But still always a classic. Definitely one that, if you just want to see, and feel what our ancestors, engendered with regards to those particular Orisha, excellent movie. But Ogun is the warrior Orisha, and it's known as the blacksmith. And blacksmiths, not a goldsmith, right? Not a silversmith. Is working with iron, And it's the part of the Orishas that really talks about being isolated, if you will, from humanity at large. It's said that Obatala, the last one that he calls, is Ogun, because he finishes the work. He's the one that completes the process. And when you're dealing with a blacksmith, you're dealing with immense heat, right? Yeah. You're dealing with someone that can stand, and say, if you can't stand the heat, get out the kitchen. Well, he built the kitchen, right? For all intents and purposes, he built the kettle. He built the stove, right? Out of his hands and his tools, but he builds it with iron. And, it's real easy to see, that now, of course, Ogun is also known, right? He can't hold his liquor. So those of you out there that have a partial to Ogun, right, you might want to stay away from that gin rummy, right? Because that gin or that rum, because you definitely, one that might not be your friend, right? But definitely is partial to it, right? And that particular energy, right? It there's an old saying that when a drunk man tells no lies, right? And Ogun is not one to hold the truth away from anyone. He will definitely tell you what's on his mind, right? He will speak it if it hurts, or if it doesn't, you just better brace yourself. And that goes along with that saying, when you lose a focus of, holding the truth, like when that liquor hits you, you're definitely going to release what it is that's inside. And that's that energy coming from inside to the surface, working with those hands with iron, right? Being fearless, being aggressive, being, indomitable. And the planet that produces it par excellence, bar none, is Mars. In fact, Mars, the surface of Mars is red, not because, some coral or old sea coral or, because it has a color because of the sand and the soil. It really is. That is a soil, but it's because the soil is full of iron oxide to be specific.
And sorry, just to cut in real quick. I mean, those of you in the South, especially like in Georgia, I mean, we have a similar type of soil here. Mm-hmm. Iron oxide in the soil creates that Georgia red clay.
Right. Exactly. Perfect correlation, King. Perfect, man. You couldn't get any better than that. That iron is what he works with, and iron, is what Mars is all about. The instrument that is very stubborn and resistant to work with unless you have immense amounts of heat to recondition it and reshape it and reform it into whatever it is that you so choose. But the one thing is that you can shape it over and over and over and over and over. And Ogun is that one that can keep battling over and over and over relentlessly. I mean, it took 10 years for the Haitians to remove the French. That's a long time.
Yeah.
We're talking wars, not just battles. And so that particular principle, again, makes a perfect correlate with Mars. Mars is the renegade of the planets, if you will. He is, I don't want to get too deep into astronomical principles, but one of the things that we took that is the eccentricity of a planet, and that is how it inclines to the ecliptic plane. And, really not the ecliptic plane, but that's incorrect. The eccentricity is how its shape is with regards to whether or not it produces like an oval or, an exact circular shape. The eccentricity, the more eccentric it is, the more oval shape it is, right? And Mars has a pretty, not one of the highest. I think Mercury has the highest eccentricity, but it's pretty. It's I think it's second to Mercury as far as eccentricity is concerned. There's other planets that have different eccentricities. We won't get into those now, but just know that it's one of the planets that kind of, it stands alone, if you will, like Ogun can. And the thing is that, like I said, if you ever really want to get a good chance to see Mars on a night sky, just take a look and you can see that redness from planet Earth without a doubt. I mean, it's a red planet without telescopes, without binoculars, it's red. And that red is symbolic of the blood that's in our veins as well, which is primarily iron. So, and Mars will draw blood just like Ogun will draw blood, right?
Yep. You can't get no better than that, man.
Yeah. I mean, batting 1,000.
Last time, 1 for 1, 2 for 2, 3 for 3.
Right? 4 for 4, right? So, perfect correlation. Perfect correlation. The next one we're going to move on to is one that Ogun had a partial liking to at one point. There's all kind of patakis. Patakis are the stories that are, attached to the Orishas. And there's many, right? Each one of them, I'm sure, has several, if I'm correct, several stories that goes along with them. But
absolutely.
Oshun, right? And ladies love Oshun. A lot of sisters. I'm Oshun this. I'm Oshun that. Right? I'm Oshun this. I'm Oshun. I'm Oshun. I'm Oshun. I mean, even
Beyonce.
I was about to say her name, brother, right? Took the name right up on that mouth. Beyonce, right? Did a video as Oshun, right? And so, tying her right on in, she is the Orisha of the river, right?
Yeah.
And we got two water Orishas. Yemaya rules the water, but she rules that salt water, right? That salt water you can't go in and just get you a gulp of. If you do, you're going to need more water, right? It might be sick after you drink that salt water.
Yeah.
But the Orisha Oshun, she rules fresh, sweet water, right? Now we know we're not saying like water like as in water like Kool-Aid or sweet water or whatever you want to call it these days. But the water literally is fresh, the water that is consumable by man and animals as well. And,
well,
go ahead,
I want to make another reference, in the South, that term is still used down here quite often, in reference to creeks, certain lakes and rivers, sweet water. That's fact. There's a big kind of, big creek in not too far from Atlanta called Sweetwater Creek.
Wow.
But I've seen those names, in different Alabama, South Carolina, all that stuff. So that's something that's been carried over.
Wow, that's heavy. Right over across the Atlantic, huh? For those of you that might have the persuasion you're from Africa and not from America, but that's a whole nother story, right? Because the Orishas come from Africa. Right? These things are not indigenous to this particular continent. If they are, I've never heard of them being indigenous to this particular continent. They come with the Atlantic slave trade, bar none.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, Santeria took it and hid them and subsumed them unto the saints, which, of course, they have their own particular system, if you will, very similar to the Yoruba, but into Ifa, but for the most part, it's the same system, just hidden and hidden in plain sight. So, they wouldn't really know what we were worshiping while we were doing our doing our business, if you will. But Oshun, right? Good old Oshun, the one that loves to look in the mirror, right? She is, the goddess of beauty, the Orisha of beauty, of social relationships, of love, and it's undeniable when you begin to see these correlations. Now, again, the river is a terrestrial thing. This is something on the earth. Our ancestors were very practical in their approach to things, and that, we understood that these things are real in the sense of the essence of them, right? And being real doesn't mean that, we're talking something that is, for a Christian mindset, something you go and sit by and is going to, walk up and kiss you. Although I've heard some stories that, they say that they have, and I'm not to doubt, because I've definitely had some interactions with some powers, if you will. But
absolutely,
we're talking about the essence of nature, right? And it's the same thing that ancient Cometians would say is the Netru, right? They're the same thing, right? Orishas, Netru, same thing, same exact thing, right? But understanding the Orisha Oshun, right? She, governs that aspect that makes life sweet. There's a story where they kind of forgot about Oshun, right? They forgot about her, and all of the waters of the earth, all the plant life, right, dried up, right? And they had to go to Olodumare to say, hey, what happened? And he said, where is Oshun, right? Where is she at? And, they diminished her, so to speak, but she can never be forgotten, she can never be ostracized from the forces that rule us, because she literally is the reason why we come together, right? She's the reason, the magnetic pull between man and woman, the magnetic pull between all creatures of opposite sex. And they come together to procreate, and she's the one that gets the party started. Now, it should be quite obvious what planet would, be affiliated with this particular Orisha. And, Venus, for all intents and purposes, right, is the one that we really can nail down to Oshun. And she is the one, it is the one that has the least eccentric path in the planets, meaning she makes almost a perfect circle as it transits 225 days around the sun. Right. Yeah. It's her. Let me say her because we're talking Oshun, right? But the planet is it, but it's her. Yeah. She rotates counterclockwise. She goes opposite of the planets. In fact, she's the only one. Right? They all rotate one way, and she rotates the opposite. She's special, right? In the sense that she does do the opposite that they do, right? Now, the other thing about Venus is that it has what's called a synodic cycle of 587 days. Well, really 587 days. And within the 587 days, she makes what's called a perfect pentagram, right? Now, her number is 5, right? And a pentagram, as we know, has 5 points. So, again, right, you can't get any better than that. That particular planet makes that particular spin, not spin, but design, right, creating what we call symmetry. And Oshun rules things that are very symmetrical, very pleasing to the eye. Right. Indeed. So, par excellence, and when you take half of 587 days, you get 292 days, point some odd days. Well, how long does it take for the fetus to stay in the womb? 290 some odd days. Right? So, again, right, as above, so below. This is what we're really showing, right?
There's another funny thing about that 5 thing. You know how back in the day when they had those radio shows and they'd be like, all the ladies press 5.
You showing your age, bro. You're right. Yeah. Hit that 5, man. That 5, that's her number, that sacred number 5. 5 senses, right? Things that are sensual. In essence, that's her thing, sensuality, right? For those of you that know anything about possession, right? The one thing that you want to do is bring the person back to their senses if they're overtaken by one of the Orisha, right? So you want to bring them to their senses, smell, right? Touch, right? Those things bring us out of that particular state of what we call possession, right? And the Orishas can ride you, right? They can take over very easily when you're in that, right, gamma brain state, if you will, right? But, you can't get any better. I mean, what are we, 6 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 5 for 5, right? Right on the 5. Perfect, right? She's number 5, right? Yeah. And so, these things are clearly seen, right? The next one we're going to move into is one that is a little strange. And I say strange because we are dealing with the 7 primary forces, right? Now, I know some people throw in Oya in there. We won't touch on Oya because Oya is, I'm going to leave Oya alone. Right? We have a good understanding. And so maybe we'll talk about Oya at another time. Maybe we'll do another show and maybe get into some other aspects of things in that regard. But
we're not even talking about the signs on this one.
No. We're not going to even go there because that's a whole another show, right? We might do that at another time, another place. Same place, another time, rather. But one that is really kind of, it's actually pretty easy to see for the most part. It's Babalu Aye. And Babalu Aye, right, is the Orisha that governs infectious disease, right? And it governs lepers, right? It governs the handicapped. It governs the downtrodden, right? Those that are disenfranchised and unfortunate from our standpoint or point of view. Babalu Aye is the principle that governs these things. And it's a very serious Orisha, right? One that is really not commonly spoke of, as we were discussing previously. Yeah. And for good reference, you have to have some respect for these powers, all of them. They all deserve respect. These are forces that are also within us as well. I want to make that clear. It's not something that is just exclusively internal, but just as it is above, so below, just as it is internally, so it is externally, right? And absolutely, we can see these things within us because that's exactly what we're looking at is the anthropomorphized aspect of God as man.
And I wrote, that's a heavy word right there, man. You pulled that
one out. No doubt. Yeah. But, God is man, right? It is. I mean, know thyself is one of the tenets that our ancestors, said, if you know thyself, then you know the universe. And those things that we look around us, as I said, the ancient Egyptians, better known as the Kamau or the Kemetu or the Cometians, depending on whatever your persuasion is. Some people say the Remech. I know my brother probably says the Remech, right? Different words for the same thing. They call them the Neteru, Neter and nature, right? Same word.
Yeah.
Right. One is East African, one's West African. The West side and East side both understood the same principles, right?
Yeah.
And, on the West side called Orishas, right? The Orisha that deals with the hard lessons in life, those things that are out of our control, right? Is Babalu Aye. When I say out of our control, meaning things that are going to teach us something to look for within the cyclical time, the cyclical process of time, how things repeat, right? Paying attention to small detail, right? You got to be real careful when you deal with Babalu Aye because it's saying, hey, are you paying close attention? Are you aware? A great sage said that, comfort is a killer, right? A great sage said comfort is a killer. And most of us don't understand it because we really always, part of us want to be comfortable all the time. I mean, we want to be in Yemaya's breasts, just relaxing and feeling the love of mama or, in the bosom of Oshun, if you will. But, that's when we get lulled to sleep. And when we're asleep, right, Babalu Aye comes to check us and wake us out of that sleep. So, Babalu Aye governing those principled hard lessons, hard knocks. When you hit hard knocks, the school of hard knocks, and you and I both know what that is, brother. Oh, yeah. The school of hard knocks, you definitely gonna get woke up.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You're definitely gonna get shook up. And brought out of that catatonic state of mind where you become quite self-aware and aware of your surroundings. Well, the principle that Babalu Aye governs, again, that cyclical understanding of things is directly correlated to Saturn.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And Saturn is that planet that really does govern. It's like the hour hand on the clock. you know. We're going to talk about the minute hand in a second, but the hour hand, what hour is it? You know, what time is it? You know, are you paying attention to time? Are you using time wisely? Are you wasting time? Are you careless with your time? Are you aware that there's an end to all things? Nothing lasts forever, right? This is what Saturn teaches us, right? It's a taskmaster, if you will, right? And that taskmaster makes sure that, you know what, when you get a little older in age, right, you realize, hey, I better do something now, because I'm not promised tomorrow, right? As what those infectious illnesses would teach us when we see those with measles, mumps, HIV/AIDS, sickle cell, you name it, right? You get to wake up. Hey, wait, let me do right. Let me do something with this. Let me value my life. And Saturn, you know, is called in the Western tradition the Grim Reaper.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The one with the sickle. In fact, the symbol for Saturn is a sickle.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, you can even see in some depictions of Babalu Aye with a sickle. That's a short sickle. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you see, there's a direct correlate, right? Now, these are forces on Earth once again, right? You know, illness, infectious illness, specifically speaking, is a force on Earth, right? And there's an old saying that, you know, God made death lest man not forget him. And that just so goes to say that, you know, you want to stay awake. You know, Saturn is the great awakener, you know. He's the one that makes sure you do know you got a checkout time, right? And if you're wise, you will use that time before you check out to maximize upon your destiny, right? So, you know, Babalu Aye is Saturn. You know, Saturn takes 30 years to make 28 to 30 years. Some say 29.5. You know, you can round it up or round it down depending on however you look at it. But it also, another thing, it takes 25 to 28 years for the frontal lobes to congeal and solidify in their functioning. Right? So that maturity, being mature, being an adult, being responsible, right, being duty-oriented is also the message that Babalu Aye and Saturn brings us. So, you know, we can say, I mean, we're right hand in hand, right? Each one of these principles and Orishas and planets line up perfectly. You know, and moving on to the other side, right, and we're going to ride Saturn into the other side of its expression in that, you know, Saturn, right, is the planet, like we said, of death, but it's also the planet of being conscientious, right? Being aware, being that particular part of us that is, right, once you've paid your dues, right, your slate is clean, right? And that clean slate, that clean conscience, right, your clean karma, debt paid, right? We can talk about Obatala, right? Obatala, right, is that white, the owner of the white cloth, right? And that white cloth represents that purity once you've paid those dues, once you've paid your debt, once you made that transition. You know, Africans, we don't wear black to funerals, right? We wear white. Right, and that white reflects all the spectrum of colors, right? Roy Biv, if they say, right? It reflects all the spectrum, meaning that we are now impartial, right, to any one given aspect of one or another, right? We're pure, right? We've been taken through the fire, and then come out on the other side as completely absolved of any karmic wrongdoings. Right? So, you know, Obatala, right, requires a very specific type of sacrifice. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of those sacrificial items, but I believe we discussed, brother, one of those items you use is doves, right? Right? White doves, right? Not pigeons. Don't start going out trying to get the pigeons, and I got me one, man. No,
let's be nice to the pigeons, man. The pigeons, they just
right. Gotta be cool to the pigeons. But the symbolic aspect of it. When people are married, many times they'll release white doves. Marriages are white. I'm not advocating a white marriage. I'm not. Right. But a lot of times when people pass on, also, they will release white doves as well. Right. As a symbol of freedom, as a symbol of being at peace. Right. And Obatala rules that peace, that cool head. Right. The cool water. Right. To cool us down. Right. One of the things you would do in a ritual dealing with Obatala is casting cool water in front of your house when, that energy comes through your door and it's been a hot, guest to come through the door. He's cursing and acting up, and we got cousins and uncles and all kinds of aunties come in just ready to tear it up. A good idea is when they leave past the threshold of that Eshu shrine, take some of that cool water and throw it on your front door, right? To pacify that heated energy, if you will. Right. One of the things that, Obatala rules is the number 10, right? And you can reduce that 10, 1 plus 0 is 1, meaning wholeness, meaning being one with all, right? Not choosing a side, whether one or the other, being in the middle, if you will. And Obatala and Saturn, the side of Saturn that deals with that is that side that, once you get to a certain mindset, and it takes age to do this, it's not something that the youth can really galvanize unless you have a very high spiritual caliber. Some can, but that's an exception to the rule. But for the most part, most youth have to learn the hard way.
Oh, yeah.
And you get into your 60s, you really kind of know, that hot-headedness is gone. I'm really cool now. I'm chill. I'm ready to relax. I'm ready to absorb all the bands of colors, right? So that I can be full, right, in whatever it is that I do. And that's what Obatala represents, is that we're full. We don't need a whole lot of extra seasonings on our food. Right, we don't need a whole lot of extra, if you will. Read all about it. Height, right? We're really relaxed. We're really laying into the spiritual aspects of life. And Obatala is that principle that really hones in that particular spiritual homogeneity, if you will, right? Last one, right? And I didn't forget about you. Right? I know we have a special relationship in my chart. We're gonna get it. We'll pan that for another show as well. But Orunmila, right? Some say Fa, right? But it really is Orunmila, right? It is the principle of divination.
Yeah.
Right. It is the principle of being all wise and all knowing. And being all wise and all knowing, it governs that process whereby we can extract messages from patterns.
Yeah.
Right. Many patterns. Some people use tea leaves, some people use dominoes. I saw these guys online, and I think it's a whole new hot item where people are using playing cards. Hey, some people use rolling dice. Whatever it is that floats your boat, right? Recognizing the the patterns and the significance of patterns, numerology, astrology, different systems that, tarot, some people use tarot, we could go on down the line. Some people use cowrie shells. Some people use tortoise shells, right? Some people use yarrow sticks. Some people use 3 coins. There's so many ways to extract the nuances of patterns. But once you understand that patterns govern creation, patterns govern all things, meaning everything has its pattern.
Yep.
Everything has its form and its function, if you will. Everything is interlaced with something else that creates a bifurcation process whereby you can tell yin and yang, hot and cold, up and down, left and right, and so forth, right? Off and on, right? In fact, binary code is really how the Supreme Being, one of the ways the Supreme Being communicates to man, is through binary code. And they co-opted the binary code and put it into a little box called a computer.
Yeah.
Right. But, there's other ways, the Fibonacci series, right? And really, there's another name for it, but all these things we will at some point touch upon getting into the sciences of astrology. Because there's different sciences within the science of astrology. There's different forms and ways to use it. But, understanding patterns, Fibonacci is a series of numbers that repeats itself or adds upon the last number and then continues and goes forward. That is another way the Supreme Being communicates, through symbols, right? Through symbol sets. Right. This is the way the Supreme Being allows us to peer into the secrets, right, of the universe. And so, the universal language is math, of course. But, if I took you to another place and, the planet, and you saw the creatures and watched the creatures for long enough, you would understand what those creatures are, in essence, communicating by way of the Supreme Being as far as their form and function, and therefore able to extract a meaning by them as well. So symbols are also another way. But go ahead, brother.
One thing that just brought to mind, like when I was in college, I was taking a introductory computer science class. And, when you're learning how to program and stuff like that, you got all these little widgets and stuff that you put together. And, there was a program that we had to put together we had to make a game, and it was called Rand a Number. Right. And, in this program, when you program it, and basically, you just have somebody, pick a number, and then it'll generate a number, and whoever was the closest wins the game. Just, kind of easy stuff to teach you how to program, right? But the kind of background kind of function going on with that rand number thing was that what came to me is that you can't even recreate randomness, right? Because the thing that was generating the number, it wasn't that it was random. It just was such a complicated algorithm that you had to really sit there and break it down to figure out the pattern of why it's generating that number versus that one. But it wasn't actually random, So it just kind of hit like, you can't even recreate randomness. We use that term like just kind of loosely, but how do you create a random thing? You just might not know the pattern of it, but you can't recreate that.
Brother, you're absolutely right. I mean, in fact, the word that they use for a random occurrence is a coincidence.
Yeah. Right.
Well, the word itself denotes that the incident is cooperative. So therefore, it denotes the opposite of what the word was intended to say. Right? No such thing as a coincident. In fact, there is a such thing as a coincident because it was cooperative with another thing in tandem with itself. So, the English language is a strange language, right? It's a bastard language at best, right? But, when you understand these things, you get to understand that, creation is created on patterns. And, the backdrop of all reality can be witnessed and understood by a mind that can observe objectively those patterns as they manifest in real time, right? And that's all astrology is, right? We're saying, hey, every 30 years, watch this, right? Every 12 years, which is what, generally Jupiter takes. In fact, it's really 11.5 years. Well, guess what? They say, oh, that stuff that you do with astrology, it's not real. Well, guess what? Right? The sun has an 11-year cycle. Right? And that 11-year cycle goes hand in hand with the 11.5-year cycle of Jupiter's circuit around the sun.
Wow.
Ouch. Right? There goes the whole astrology is a fake science theory, right? Because if you can measure the process of the sun's highs and lows, right, which happens every 5.5 years, right? This is a tide. When we measure tides, well, how do they measure the tides on the planet Earth? They don't have a machine that sits out and says, oh, we got the tide in this. There's no machine that does that.
Yeah.
No, not that I know of, right? I mean, they'd have to measure gravitons, and graviton is still a theory, right? Right? So, again, right, the science of astrology is bar none real, right? It's real deal, right? When we understand that, Orunmila, right, governs astrology, right? It governs divination, right? There's a system in astrology that we use called prajna, right? And I can get answers just like I could when I go to an oracle, right? In fact, most of you call me, you don't know. I erect a prajna chart for what you're asking. That's how I already know. Right. So, and that's when astrologers can become adept and say, well, yeah, I know you're calling about your lost keys. How'd you know that? The third Lord, right, is in the 12th house, and the fourth Lord is conjunct the third Lord in the 12th house, which fourth Lord rules cars, and the third house rules the thing that runs or turns or shifts the car. Right. Right. So we know all kinds of things when there's really nothing you can hide from an advanced astrologer. Nothing. Right. You can't hide anything from an Orunmila either. Right.
Nope.
Tahuti is another aspect in ancient Kemet that was the process and netter that governs mathematics. Well, this is a perfect correlate. I mean, you could go around the world. Odin, right? In Norse tradition, I mean, even the Norse gods got it too, right? Odin, right? Also was a diviner, right? In fact, the runes, right? People heard of runes? Comes from that particular same principle. Now, I'm not one to use runes because that subset of symbols is not one that I'm familiar with nor adept at using, but if that floats your boat, hey, if it works for you, go for it. But nonetheless, these principles are universal. And in the heavens, Jupiter is like the minute hand, right? The minute hand. And Saturn is the hour. Well, that minute hand, right, is just as regular as the other hand, and the second hand as well, right? That minute hand that goes around, it's the one that shifts the clock forward, right? Jupiter is that planet that every 12 years you get a whole new subset of knowledge when you have a Jupiter return. 12, 24, 36, and so forth. Right? You get a new subset of knowledge. You will get a new subset of knowledge to add to your knowledge repertoire if you're paying attention. Right? So, Jupiter has its own magnetic sphere. In fact, it's the largest planet, and its magnetosphere is so large, in fact, you could see it from the night sky if it was visible. Right? I mean, I'm talking about larger than the planet itself is fairly bright. In fact, if you go outside in the evening, I'm going to say 9-ish, right after sunset, you can see Jupiter in the sign of Scorpio. Right? That's how we know it's in Scorpio, y'all. We don't have to look to a piece of paper. We can see it in the sky. But it's right next to Antares, which is the heart of the Scorpion, a bright red star. This is unmistakable, right? Look to the right, it looks like, and Venus is quite bright, but Jupiter is bright as well, especially, right, when it's retrograde. Now, it's not, actually, the retrograde will end here this month in August, right?
Yeah.
But when it's retrograde, it's brightest, right? Meaning it's opposite to the sun, right? All planets that are retrograde are opposite to the sun, right? Except the exception of the inferior planets, which are Venus and Mercury, right? But nonetheless, right? Orunmila, right, is the Orisha that governs, right, our ability to communicate with the divine, right? Now, most people don't know, Shango actually had this power first, right? He had it first, but he traded it in for dance, right? Traded it in for dance, right? And Orunmila came the one that was the operator of the process of the oracle or divination. Now, why Shango traded it for dance, a whole nother story, maybe for another time, right? But nonetheless, right, Orunmila is, bar none, connected with the planet of Jupiter, right? And so I believe, brother, that concludes our 7, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, that's it, man.
What you think?
I think that was excellent. It's one of those things where when we think of astrology, and I know, in the traditions, the various traditional African, religions, the popular ones, that exchange is not common, but we know it's there. And, a lot of times, when we think about astrology, we don't really think about Africa and our traditional, systems from there. And, God bless, the Indians for, everything that they've brought to the table, as far as this tradition, but, it's good to have this perspective as well, because people are into astrology and they're into the Orishas, but, being able to kind of, merge the two together and be able to, like I said at first, kind of, sharpen up or, kind of clarify, what you're learning and, and what you're into and everything like that. So I think this is definitely been a great show indeed.
I'd have to agree with brother. I definitely enjoyed, sharing with the people those correspondences, and we will get into some of the other ones, at some point down the line, because some of them are 1-for-1. Some of them you kind of have to dig a little deeper, and who knows? We might have a surprise show. We might have, someone that can even elaborate on the Orishas in a different way that. We might be able to get a little deeper in the conversation, but this is definitely a good start and a good headway into connecting those particular cosmic principles with the Orisha. So it's an excellent show, brother, and I sure appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, as well, man. As well. All right. So, that's going to wrap up this show for this week. Like I said at the beginning, we got a little giveaway we're gonna do, and basically the way how we're gonna do it is, so we need something from you, right? So number one, if you're a listener to this show, number one, you have to, subscribe to our show on whichever major platform that you're listening to our podcast on, right? And take a screenshot of that. And you need to follow us on Instagram. All right. Share one of our podcast promos on social media, right? And we need you to comment on one of our posts on Instagram or Facebook, right? Now, if you go through those steps, what we're going to do is we're going to, quote unquote, randomly pick pick 3 names.
Orunmila will pick it.
Yeah. We'll find an interesting way, to put it together. But so yeah, we'll pick 3 people who follows those steps, and then we'll get you your sidereal chart for free. All right, we'll export you a chart out, and so you can, be able to follow along with the show and see what's going on in your first house, what's going on in your third house, what's Jupiter doing in your chart, and so on and so on. All right, and we're gonna have a couple more of these coming up, so just stay tuned. And here's to keep track with everything. What I ask you to do is just DM us or Facebook message us once you complete all these steps. You complete those steps, and just shoot us screenshots, of those, you executing those steps, and then that puts your name in the hat. All right, and we will announce the winners on the following show. On episode 8, we'll announce the winners. All right, so make sure you get to that so you can get your chart. All right. And before we close out, want to remind you again, this episode was brought to you by Push It Forward Media Group and Orishas Astrology. You can follow us at Push It Forward, and follow the podcast as well at Cosmic Convo, and that's where you're going to send your DMs to, and that's where you're going to comment and follow and all that stuff like that at Cosmic Convo. And Brother Rod, how do you get to Orishas again?
Once again, you can find me on IG or Facebook, either which you'll just type in Shechem, and that's SHEKHEM space Ra. On either one of those platforms, I'm right there waiting on you. Or you can also find me again on YouTube at Orishas Astrology.
Indeed. So yeah, man. So this has been another great show. We appreciate all the listeners. You guys have been pretty consistent. So we definitely appreciate that. And let's blow this thing up and take it to the next level. And make sure you participate. In this giveaway we got here. This is very valuable. I mean, I know there's a lot of apps and stuff out there, but what we'll give you is what you can't get for free from any app or anything on a website. So you don't want to miss out on that. But yeah, so on that note, till next time, peace.